Good afternoon. My name is Remi. I'm the director of the Shridath Ramphal Center for International Trade Law Policy and Services at the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus in Barbados. It is such a pleasure to be able to address you and participate in this seventh BioTrade Congress. I'm really sorry that I cannot be there with you in person, but I hope you accept these very simple remarks that I hope really bring to the forefront how important projects like these are as opportunities for small island developing states like my own to, one, utilize the ocean, which is a vast area of potential for sustainable commercialization, but also to think about its conservation. Seaweeds are really important to both of these, and I want to, in the next 6 or so minutes, explain why it is that there are opportunities to commercialize seaweed and at the same time utilize it for our sustainability, which is becoming an importantly and increasingly core part of even the trade agenda. So climate change, it doesn't need to be repeated, really disproportionately affects Caribbean countries. And one of the ways that it is visibly demonstrating these impacts is through the propagation of one species of seaweed called sargassum. And if you go and visit the Caribbean anytime right now, especially in certain core months, you will find littered around the beaches this ugly brown algae, which is really widely distributed across tropical and temperate oceans and really docks on our sand. This has become a real problem for not just the tourism sector, but also for our fishermen and many of the persons who utilize the sea as a basis for their subsistence as well as for their economic survival. But we have seen in the Caribbean really policymakers, small farmers, entrepreneurs begin to utilize the seaweed as an opportunity, really a case of turning lemons into lemonade. And these are also opportunities for the Caribbean to showcase to the world its entrepreneurial spirit and its creativity. So in the next couple of minutes, I really want to talk about where I see the value lying in the global trading system for seaweed cultivation, export, and production. And then I want to wrap it up with some thoughts that I have as part of a project that I am co-leading and using seaweed as an example of how the trade system needs to accommodate its smallest, like the Caribbean, but also provide opportunities for them in the new sustainability agenda. So we have done a little bit of calculations, and the report that's going to come out from this project, I suspect, is going to provide much needed direction, data, science for us to really utilize and promulgate this sector. But from our very basic sector overview and research so far, we have seen that FAO reports that the seaweed industry provides an opportunity for the production of a wide variety of products, including food products for human consumption, hydrocolloids, fertilizers, and animal feed. And some of the estimates go as high as 5 to 6 billion US dollars a year. Now, I don't know how much of that global market the Caribbean is actually capturing, but we know that there's a growing demand in China, Japan, and Korea for seaweed. And this is something that we would really need to study very, very closely in order to understand potential export markets. Studies have identified, for instance, that it is seaweed that is a rich source of dietary fiber, fatty acids, essential amino acids, and vitamins A, B, C, and E, which would probably classify it with the right marketing as one of these superfoods. And it's therefore a solution to common nutritional deficiencies, particularly for poorer coastal communities. And as we're seeing in some countries, the development increasingly of these food science labs, this development of the seaweed industry can go hand in hand with the development also of our scientific capacity to really be able to zone in on the nutritional value as part of our marketing and branding strategy. Canary, which is the Caribbean Natural and Resources Institute, is also finding that there's a most widespread use of seaweeds as a basis for food. And if you go in any of the supermarket shelves now, you will actually see that many of the Caribbean islands, and I can say this from St. Lucia, are really going into the export and production of seaweeds. So whether it's in a seaweed liqueur or a sea moss drink, these are really newer areas that are being supported by government and government export agencies. And we can see a lot of value of investment. If we think of industrial policy, this may be an area that we can eventually scale up and be able to export because seaweed is all over, subject of obviously to proper conservation measures. Now, I mentioned that seaweed is predominantly seen as a food, but the sargassum plague that I described has also been seen as an opportunity for creative entrepreneurs, young creative entrepreneurs, as well as academics, to really utilize it in order to contribute to the fertilizing sector in the Caribbean. So I'm from St. Lucia, and a few years ago, we had a very entrepreneurial young man coming out saying that he could actually find ways of making a fertilizer for export. And these various types of incubator projects have been supported by the government. I also know, because I work at the University of the West Indies, that there are opportunities also for seeing seaweed as a renewable energy source. Like many other SIDS, the Caribbean has committed from switching from fossil fuels to more sustainable sources of energy in order to meet greenhouse gas emission targets and the nationally determined contributions under the UNFCCC. Seaweed is increasingly being seen as a potential source of organic or biofuel, and rated as an opportunity for encouraging the Caribbean to invest in carbon sinks. One example of this creative use of sargassum is in the Caribbean's Rum and Sargassum Incorporated project coming out of Barbados, which was officially launched in June 2023. And it's an 18-month project which aims to provide a biofuel solution to transport and energy needs of Barbados using not just sargassum seaweed and the waste products generated from rum, but it's also an opportunity, I think, for us to think creatively about contributing to the circular economy and the waste economy, and really using these as opportunities to leverage the Caribbean's, again, creativity and its contribution to the loss of biodiversity efforts that are being taken. So not just trade, but also biodiversity. We also see opportunities for seaweed farming from carbon sequestration and nitrogen cycling. The strongly autotrophic seaweed population around the world takes up about 1,500 million tons of carbon per year through net production, making seaweed harvesting from both wild stocks and aquaculture a proven approach for removing CO2 emissions from the atmosphere. And when we think again about the Caribbean investing much more in these types of projects, that it can use carbon sinks in the region as a basis for carbon trading, this is another area that we believe is an opportunity. Now, I mentioned before that I'm part of a global project that's really looking at how do we make the global trading system more sustainable. And over the past 2 years, we engage in very specific global workshops looking at key areas where we see the trade and sustainability interface having the most potential for leverage, but also for redress and reform. And one of the areas that we looked at as points of leverage for small island developing states is the blue economy. This seaweed project perhaps could be a poster child for our project because in the end, it brings together a lot of the things that we think represent the problems with the current trade system, but also the opportunities. So one of the areas that is key for seaweed and any other type of bio trade sector is standards. We need to get to a place in the international global system where standards and standard making is inclusive, is green, and ultimately provides opportunities for the poorest countries and the most marginalized countries. Seaweed is an opportunity for our smaller countries to involve themselves in the production of the standards that are going to impact their access into bigger countries where the consumer demand is largest. As a superfood, we still need to be able to market it as such. Our science has to meet the labels, has to ultimately meet the standards and requirements of these countries. So we need to make sure that our seaweed production is in line with some of these standards, and they may vary across the world. And one approach would be to ensure that there are common standards. So when we encourage our people, our entrepreneurs to meet these standards in one market, it can automatically be valid for other markets. We also see seaweed as an opportunity for more inclusive trade. This is a buzzword in the trade world now. How do we get marginalized communities, MSMEs, small entrepreneurs, women, indigenous communities, many of which are closest to these natural resources, to be part of the conversation and represented in the discussions in Geneva and in other places where rules are being made, but also part of the economy of the new sustainability agenda. And we see that women play a very pivotal role, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the studies coming out of UNCTAD that give us numbers and opportunities for increasing the numbers of women who are involved in that trade. And I also think this is an opportunity to contribute, as we mentioned before, to the circular economy. How do we ensure that waste is not just gotten rid of, but actually reinserted and reutilized in order to bring value? So we gave the example, for instance, of the biofuel and the sargassum and rum project that is currently being housed at the university and being incubated. All of these are areas for potential leverage that the seaweed project is going to bring to the fore. So I'm going to end there and say that I see this as an absolute winner. I see it from our point of view as academics, but also as persons involved in the Remaking Trade project as an opportunity for us to really get more countries involved, but also for them to benefit from their own natural resources and for them to meet their climate targets. So well done. I really wish that I could have been there with you, and I wish you luck in the discussions that will surely follow these presentations. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.